This is the new Honda Civic. And I know what you might be thinking, kind of looks a little bit like the old one. But there's actually a lot of newness going on here. We've got a new electrified engine to form an all-hybrid engine lineup. We've got a completely overhauled cabin and also a slightly longer wheelbase to open up a bit more room in the cabin. In fact, the only familiar thing about this Civic is sort of the way it looks. This is arguably one of the biggest cars of the decade so far, and today we're going to find out just what Honda's been up to with its 11th generation Civic. But before I go any further, if you like what we do, why not give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. The previous generation Civic caused a bit of a stir when it first came about because a lot of people thought the design was just a bit too fussy. But this new Civic really strips things back and has a little bit more of a streamlined look. Now take the front bumper, for example. On the old car, this was full of lots of different elements and angles, and it just looked a bit cluttered. But on here, the only real elements that we have are the actual bumper itself, the grille, which has got a honeycomb effect. More on that a little bit later. And you've also got a grille at the base of the bumper, which kind of feeds in to these fog lamps. Coupled with that are these new headlights, which on top spec cars that we have here are matrix LED headlights. But there are actually some elements taken over from the old car as well, such as the more pronounced brow at the face of the car. Most Civics look really different when they go from generation to generation, but you can clearly see that they're kind of sticking with a design language, even though it's a lot more streamlined. All cars in the UK are going to come with 18-inch wheels as standard, and they're all going to be wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres as well, which are very sticky. Now, the silhouette of the car is very similar to the previous gen, so they've kind of kept that coupe-like roofline. It's definitely not a traditional hatchback design, but bear in mind that the one that we have here is still a hatchback. You can get a saloon over in other markets, predominantly the United States, but we're not going to be getting that in the UK. We just get a hatchback here. And although the side profile may look very similar to the old car, the wheelbase has actually been extended by 35mm to open up a bit more space in the cabin. And also the rear track is a little bit wider to improve handling. Now, design-wise, the saloon and the hatchback are very similar to each other, but there are differences at the back. So the saloon has individual light pods either side for the tail lights, but on the hatchback, we have a light bar that joins the two together. Now, as far as I understand, this only lights up when you hit the brakes, but still, it's a very in thing at the moment to have a light bar, and the new Honda Civic has it. You also have slightly different hinges for the boot lid. So on the previous car, they used to be present and quite big on top here, but now they're actually included within the actual boot mechanism itself, so it's a lot sleeker. And there is just a tiny lip at the back, which kind of hints at a rear spoiler, but nowhere near as big as what we got on the old car. Now let's open things up. So again, while it has that kind of saloon-like look, this is very much a hatchback with a full hatchback boot lid. And it's actually a little bit lighter than before as well, so opening this up should be nice and easy. Now, Honda haven't given me a figure yet for the boot space. They say it's over 400 litres. The previous car was also over 400 litres, so it's hard really to be able to compare this to the old version. Now, we have a little bit of a load lip, but it's actually quite a low boot line, so getting stuff in and out of the car should be pretty easy. And there's a little bit of extra storage beneath the boot floor, but not masses in all fairness. And finally, something we got in the old Civic, we've got a load cover that is actually retractable and comes in from the left-hand side. Not entirely sure how much you would use it because we've also got a load cover attached to the boot lid as well, but still, that's the boot of the new Honda Civic. The bonnet is now made of aluminium, a bit like a Honda Civic Type R. And not only does that make the car lighter, but it just means that it's easier to lift up the bonnet and see what's inside. And what we've got here is a 2-litre hybrid system, and it's the only engine option we'll be getting in the UK at launch anyway. And so what it is, you've got a 2-litre petrol engine that's connected up to 2 electric motors and a 72-cell battery system. Now, the way the hybrid system works is a little bit complicated, but I'll do my best to explain it. Basically, under hybrid conditions, which I would assume you'll get most of the time, The engine actually feeds power into the battery, which then powers the electric motors, which sends power to the front wheels. You can run in EV mode only, where the electric motors power the front wheels by themselves, or the combustion engine can take over and that can send power directly to the front wheels. Now, unlike a plug-in hybrid where you plug it in, top the battery up and have, say, 20 to 30 miles on electric power alone, this is a self-charging hybrid, which means that you never need to plug it in, it does all the charging up for you, but you won't get those long stints of electric running. Basically, the car will sort out when it wants to be in EV mode, hybrid, or petrol only. Some might see that as a bit of a compromise, but unless you're really religious at topping your car up, a self-charging hybrid is usually the best way to go. And while we don't have any official MPG figures yet, Honda's estimating a figure of around 60 mpg. Some of you may have seen that there's a 1.5 litre VTEC version available. We're not getting that in the UK. That's so far only available in the saloon variant, which we see in the United States. But what we will have is a Civic Type R. Now, we haven't seen the official Type R yet, although the company has released official spy shots of the vehicle, and I would expect that we'll get the same 2-litre engine that we got in the previous version, although with a slight power increase to 320 HP. Don't expect it to be all-wheel drive though. Honda's really proud about making front-wheel drive performance cars, so don't expect it to go as a direct rival to the Audi S3 or Mercedes A35 AMG. It's going to stay as a proper front-wheel drive hot hatch. Remember the honeycomb grille I pointed out earlier? Well, the theme continues on the inside. We've got this honeycomb vent that runs along the width of the dashboard, and you've got these cool little toggles here where you can change the direction of where the air goes. Honda's system also diffuses the air around you, so it just doesn't blast you with cold or hot air right in your face. And those climate settings are accessed through physical buttons and dials. This is something that Honda is very proud of, that they have physical controls, because, let's face it, doing your climate settings through a touch system can be a real pain in the backside. There's no physical lever for the drive selector. It's all done through buttons. So if you want to go into drive, you just press D, neutral, N, and so forth. A little toggle for the different drive modes, and also a large storage bin under the armrest. There's a new steering wheel design, although the button quality isn't the best, and there's also this quite ugly button down here for the heated wheel setting, which just doesn't look nearly as neatly integrated as pretty much every other car out there. On the whole though, the interior design of this new Civic is a huge improvement over the old car, which was massively cluttered, and what we have in here feels a lot more premium. The only real downside is just some of the buttons look a little bit Fisher-Price, but other than that, a big step forwards. As is the tech. This top spec model has a 9-inch infotainment screen with Honda's latest infotainment software, and it feels like a huge step over what we had in the old Civic. The menu is far more responsive and also far easier to comprehend compared to the old car, although I don't think it's the flashiest thing. It's an upgrade of what they did on the Honda E, but still looks a little bit basic compared to what some of the competition is running. And on the plus side, we have physical shortcuts for the home button and also the volume control. There's also a digital cockpit as well. It comes in at 10 inches on this model, but lower down the range, it'll be a 7-inch system, but still, it's fully digital, really easy to comprehend, nice and crystal clear. Not a huge amount of customization options on there, but it doesn't matter. I still think it makes the car feel a lot more high-tech than having a mix of analog and digital systems. It's pretty clear to see that they've increased the wheelbase of the new Civic because legroom is plentiful. Look how much knee room I've got to play with, particularly with the driver's seat in my position. There's just so much space. Although, bearing in mind I am just under 6 foot, I think even if you're 6 foot and over, it should still feel pretty spacious here. It does get a little bit tighter though when it comes to headroom. Now I fit in pretty much anything, so I can sit upright and it's all fine. However, if you were 6 foot and over, you might find yourself starting to struggle with headroom a little bit because there's not a lot of play above my head. And I think that's partly down to that coupe-like design. It does mean that we have something that has a longer wheelbase, which is better for legroom, but it does compromise headroom just a wee bit. Now the Civic does come with an armrest. It's got a couple of cup holders in it, plus we have 2 USB ports, and they're regular USB, or the old style, rather than the newer style USB-C. The new Honda Civic is also really good at not hitting people, and that's because we've got a 100-degree camera right up here which works in conjunction with 4 sonar sensors, 2 at the front and 2 at the rear, and they work together to pick up metallic and non-metallic objects that might stray in front of the road, and the car will automatically apply the brakes so you don't hit them. Now, this is the point of where I need to talk about pricing, and is so often the case when we do these studio shoots. I don't know yet, because the new Honda Civic won't be hitting showrooms until the end of 2022. So things like trim levels and pricing have still got to be figured out. If I would hazard a guess, it's probably going to come in at around £25,000, which is a little bit more than what the current Honda Civic is, but I'm sure that commenters will be really happy to tell me I'm wrong if I get it wrong by the end of the year. And if you want to be that person, make sure you subscribe, because once we can get this out on the road, I'll have a review of it right here on the channel.